I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Wonderful, and thank you. And good morning or afternoon or evening, whatever's appropriate for wherever you are at the moment. This morning, I've got to chat with you all about some interesting observations I've made over the last several months. I'm sure many of you are much more technologically savvy than I am, at least in the arena of social networking and what have you. I have to confess that since I spend many hours a day programming computers, about the last thing in the world I really want to do when I get home is mess with one. But I've over the last few months finally gotten an Instagram account, primarily so that I could follow my kids and remain involved in some of the stuff they're involved in, and stay in touch with their lives and what have you. I was not prepared for what I was going to encounter when I hopped into the deep end of the social networking pool. And so I've spent some time studying the phenomena I've encountered out there, and I actually even have something of a plan for time going forward. But I wanted to make some observations that I promise you here in a couple of slides we're going to tie back to the Tao Te Ching and to hopefully some relatively useful information on living. In wandering about the wide world of Instagram, I have noticed virtually every flavor of the human condition that I ever thought existed, and a few that I had no idea were out there. Kind of an interesting picture of the internet and society worldwide, if you will. I am continually amazed. You notice my second bullet point there is look at mine with the ellipsis. I am astounded at some of the things that people will post out there, various body parts and outfits and all sorts of wonderful, thrilling, and exciting images, I guess. Some of them I'm actually at a loss for words to describe. I have to confess I myself do not participate in that. I don't think I'm that much fun to look at. But it is interesting. And commentary and everything from paragraphs to novellas that range from bravado and machismo to horrendously painful cries for help. All of the various knots, kinks, and vagaries and grotesqueries of human existence appear to be publicly on display out there. The first thing that I thought when I looked at a lot of this stuff is, I wonder if these folks realize that there is absolutely no assumption of privacy or security in social networking. Once again, because I spend my workday programming computers and managing databases and servers and that sort of thing, I'm rather keenly aware of a lot of the vulnerabilities out there to system security and to what somebody like me could do with a lot of the information that people put on the internet or on their devices under that delusion that their information is secure and safe. And in social networking in particular, I've noticed that people tend to be fairly expressive with information that I would otherwise think would be much more carefully guarded. But there is that presumption of some kind of safety. I'm here to tell you guys, just by way of information, that there is no presumption of privacy or safety, either one, on any of the social networking platforms. Anytime you send an email, save a file, post an image, whatever, you might as well consider that published to the world, because it's out there in the eternal ethers of binary code, and will be forever. There's absolutely no presumption of privacy. All of a sudden, we all live in glass houses, and the entire world is looking in. I would imagine for many of you, my amazement and astonishment at some of these observations is perhaps significantly behind the times. But like I said, I don't really do much with social networking. I never have. I still don't have a Facebook account. I probably never will. I think I have a Google Plus account, but I got that because I have Gmail and I have no idea what to do with it, and don't really care. But in following my children, I've noticed a couple of things that I find somewhat unsettling. First of all, along with that presumption of safety and the illusion of security, I find that discontent out there in the social networking world is pretty much rampant. There's not a lot of deep introspection or a lot of analysis. It doesn't appear to be about how and why life works the way it does, or what's going on, or even amongst those who are attempting to publish their version of some kind of a spirituality, or there's an awful lot of self-help stuff out there, an awful lot of information directed at folks with varying issues and what have you. But by and large, it seems to be lots and lots and lots of people with broken hearts and pretty significant emotional issues. And I find that the number of people out there speaking from a perspective of self-hatred and self-loathing is downright staggering. It seems to me that everyone out there wants someone else to make them happy, to help them fix their problems, or validate their emotions and feelings, or give them a reason to get up the next morning. And in considering that, I've come to the conclusion that very likely is a microcosmic view of the way the world at large works. I think that probably is a cross-section of the global population at both its best and its worst, and everything in between. And that gave me a reason to sit back and do some real pondering on what's really going on here, and what's really happening in society, globally speaking. First of all, I find it amazing that in my lifetime we have gone from a collection of relatively disconnected and very culturally diverse and once again isolated countries to a global economy and a global audience, and the ability to connect nearly instantaneously with people from all over the planet utilizing some of these tools. I think that's perhaps a mixed blessing in a lot of cases, because not everyone naturally understands the customs and cultures and ways of doing things in other parts of the world. I converse with a few people from Germany I'm fortunate in that I speak the language well, so I understand and can converse in German with other people, and I find the practice to be intellectually stimulating and fun. And it's not something I get to do real often. I get to chat with some folks from Asia, and that's fun, and from various parts all over. But then again, there are folks on there from South America, Mexico, other Spanish-speaking nations, and I do not speak Spanish, nor do I speak Chinese or Japanese. Not well enough, certainly, to claim any kind of fluency. And so every now and again, I bump up against the language barrier in particular in attempts to communicate. But whether or not we acknowledge some of those differences and barriers, the global audience is there and ready to talk in many cases. And that carries with it some responsibility if we're wise, because we need to be aware of and sensitive to some of those differences, and we need to be prepared to try to extend some deference and some respect and some caution over what we say and what we do, so that we don't make somebody really uncomfortable or inadvertently or accidentally do something or say something offensive. And when you think about the magnitude of that audience, even on one of these sites, in this case Instagram, it is quite mind-boggling the number of people that one can reach in a real hurry. It's quite interesting to consider. And so I don't post a lot, but I do a lot of reading. And as I watch a lot of these posts and situations unfold naturally as they do, I'm continually reminded of chapter 46 of the Tao Te Ching, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But what it says is this: when the world has the Tao, fast horses are retired to till the soil. When the world lacks the Tao, war horses give birth on the battlefield. There is no crime greater than greed, no disaster greater than discontentment, no fault greater than avarice. Thus, the satisfaction of contentment is the lasting satisfaction. At first blush, this may not seem to have a lot to do with global interaction and social networking, but I promise you it does. This is Lao Tzu's 2,500-year-old description of the functioning of society. In his time, he recognized that when communities held on to the philosophy of the Tao of Heaven, that peace and joy and contentment and fulfillment reigned over that community, and that people were happy and not involved in warfare and conflict and divisiveness and all of the contentious problems that affect society to this day. And so, his illustrative term for that was that fast horses are retired to till the soil. It's the difference between a horse that leisurely pulls a plow to grow crops for somebody who's farming for a living, and one that's pulling a chariot hoping not to die in a war. That image that Lao Tzu painted in his mind also painted a very specific image in the minds of his readers at the time, who were very familiar with the appearance of both war horses and plow horses. But if we extend that metaphor to what we're familiar with in modern times, what we're talking about is a society that is either embroiled in conflict or embraced in the Tao. Lao Tzu further goes on to say that there's no crime greater than greed, no disaster greater than discontentment, and no fault greater than avarice. And we can see in this little cross-section of the global society all of those things at work. I don't know how much of what I read is factual. I'm quite sure that there's a healthy percentage of it that is just there. And I'm not really concerned at the moment with what's accurate and what isn't. I'm going to assume, for the sake of argument, that what's there is essentially precise and true. But by reading through those posts, one can find the entire gamut of greed, discontentment, and avarice in one nifty little prepackaged location all at the same time. And a lot of it's for sale. I don't always understand. I mean, I understand why it is and I understand how it works, but I don't understand what the attraction is for people to be drawn into those sorts of things all the time. Because a lot of those things bring nothing but trouble and suffering to us. Discontentment, in my personal humble opinion, is the cause of more suffering on this planet than anything else. Discontentment brings about greed and avarice. Greed being the desire for way more than we have, and avarice being the willingness and ability to use unscrupulous means to achieve the greed. Those things are born out of an inability to be content with our lot in life, and with taking a positive and purposeful action to improve our lot in life. And so Lao Tzu says the satisfaction of contentment is the lasting satisfaction. What's not said between those two lines is that greed and avarice create a hole that you can't ever fill up. There's never enough stuff to cure greed. There's never enough education, enough promise, enough good, enough joy, enough stuff to supplant avarice and dishonesty once it takes hold. Those two things are remarkably difficult to get out from underneath. They are a weight around our neck that will drag us to the bottom of existence. Real contentment with our lot in life and positive steps down the path are the only things that endure and that really bring happiness in this existence. Being able to be content with where we are allows us to change our focus on our existence from one of how come I don't have what the guy next door has to I have enough. What I told my children frequently when they were younger, and they asked me if they could have this, that, or the other thing, was, have you eaten today? And they'd say, of course, yes, because obviously they had. And I'd tell them, well, okay, you're luckier than about 80% of the children on the face of the planet right now. You have a roof over your head, your home's warm, you have food in your tummy, you have a nice place to sleep, and you have enough stuff to play with to keep you busy for the next 2 lifetimes. It's a matter of perspective. Sometimes they were happy with that answer, sometimes they weren't. But the education was eventually achieved. There's always going to be something out there that we don't have. There's always going to be more stuff to acquire. There's always going to be some kind of an issue or a problem or an insurmountable obstacle to our lives out there someplace. Always something to be overcome, climbed over, or gotten around. But that doesn't mean that where we are is a terrible place to be. And unless we are truly in a position of lack and want and hunger, we're not as bad off as we could be. And it bears remembering from time to time that there are a lot of people in the world that are a bunch worse off than we're ever going to be. But yet we persist in this path that results in so much pain and anguish because of that discontentment. Derek, are you trying to get a hold of me?
No, Bill. Nothing from my end. Please continue.
Oh, sorry, I just heard something going on in the background there. That discontentment, that inability to find happiness in one's position causes so much suffering. And watching this occur has just made that single point unbelievably evident to me. But when I read chapter 46, I realize this same point has been evident for the better part of 2,500 years. Lao Tzu wrote about this. And so the questions that I pose are how much of that suffering could be avoided or relieved if people would only learn to look inside themselves for that joy and that happiness. And how can we help bring about an end to that suffering? Now, I promised you I had something of a plan, and I do. But let me wrap this up for you real quick. Just by making the observation that suffering seems to be an intrinsic part of being human. I think the fact that we're all human beings on this planet means that we are bound to suffer at some level. I think that's part of our educational process. But it also seems to me to be very apparent that most people don't have any idea how to deal with or mitigate their suffering or what to do to set their lives in order. So, maybe one of the roles that we're meant to embrace as cultivators of the Tao teachings is that role of helping others to realize how to mitigate that suffering in their lives. I'm not suggesting that we involve ourselves in somebody's business who absolutely doesn't want us to be there. What I'm suggesting is that we all let our good example and positivity radiate to those around us so that they maybe can see that things can be different, that they can find a better set of answers, and that their lives can be filled with a measure of peace and of joy and of contentment if they will allow that to occur. In light of what I've seen, I put a post out asking the folks that follow me if they would be interested in me publishing, a lot of the stuff that I talk about here on the Instagram page that I have, and a large number of them said yes. And so I'm going to start publishing, short little 1 or 2 paragraph posts that delve into some of these teachings on contentment and happiness and putting one's life together, and hopefully maybe that'll be helpful to somebody. Because I can't just sit idly by and watch even one person try to implode. I find looking at that to be nearly as painful as if it were happening to me. I've been in that position before. It isn't fun. But I'd like to encourage all of you, when you have the opportunity, to take that opportunity to do something along those same lines. Because we all have the opportunity to help somebody begin to crawl out of that hole. And it sure looks to me like the world needs the help. Thank you all very much for letting me share with you, and I sure hope something I said this morning was helpful. Thank you.
Bill, I've known you all this time, and I had no idea that you spoke German.
Yeah, I do. Actually, natively. My grandpa on my mom's side was from a little town called Krefeld am Main in Germany. I grew up listening to beer house songs, bouncing on his knee.
Wow. Any other special talents I'm not aware of?
Well, I can fly, but nobody's real interested in that.
You're kidding, yes.
No.
So Bill, do you have your Instagram username so people who are listening in can follow you on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm Sifu Bill. SIFUBILL.
Okay, terrific. And I'm happy the Sifu Bill was still up for grabs.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.